Hello folks, this is Jacob Harkey. It is August 25th, 2024, and it's a pleasure to be here speaking with you all. It's been a few weeks now since I've gone live. It's certainly been an eventful few weeks on my end. Hope things have been going well for you all. But I figured, as we're coming up on the end of the be a bad time to check in with you all, maybe update you all a little bit on how things have been going, and just chat, see who pops in. I don't know that we have many folks in here yet, but to share some life updates for those who I haven't told or who haven't caught it in a previous stream. I did accept a new full-time teaching job, and we just finished our first week of school, and I'm getting ready to start our second week of school tomorrow. It's going well so far. I like my coworkers. It's a fun vibe so far, no complaints. Now, I do know that as a teacher, there will be difficult days. There will be some days that are much harder than others. But I'm feeling like I'm in a good place mentally right now, and I'm looking forward to what's coming. I will point out that one silver lining is that I may have less time moving forward to attend court hearings the way that I have and the way that I've loved to, doing updates outside of the courthouse after attending hearings in cases that we've been following. Thankfully, we've still got Dodge around. Dodge Landisman has been putting his hours in, keeping you all updated about what's going on in the courthouses these days, since my availability has shrunk somewhat. I did recently move. I'm living in LA County, so that now when I come to downtown LA or to Scientology buildings, wherever I may find myself, it's a little bit less of a commute than when I was living in Orange County. But that's another update. I certainly have some work to do as far as learning how to cook, as it's certainly something that I have not had to do much previously. Much of my life so far has consisted of either living with family members who were cooking many of my meals or living in the dorms at college where I was on a meal plan. Probably haven't been eating the most healthy diet in the world so far over these last few weeks. I've certainly had a good amount of fast food, takeout, and microwaved meals, but I will get there. Progress is progress, one step at a time. And I see that DIY girl says, take cooking lessons, YouTube. Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't know how much I was gonna get into this, but I did subscribe to a week of meal prep. So I'll be having some of my meals mailed to me in the coming days. And I've chatted with some other friends who have tried services like the one that I'm currently trying, and they've also tried similar services where rather than sending a fully prepared meal, they'll send ingredients so that then you can follow the recipes that they provide, and that way you can have your groceries provided to you while also learning some valuable skills. Maybe I'll work my way up to that. I'll get there. Hi, Cat Ocean. Cat says, hey Jacob, hope the school year ends up going well for you. Thank you, Cat. Certainly hope it goes well too. And thank you, Cat, for the coverage that you provided at the DNC this past week. I figured that's something that I'll get to at some point. But I wanted to take it a few steps at a time and start by just sharing some updates on my life. And Rally Sports has also great cookbooks out there for simple meals. That might be the move for me as well. Lexi says, I've been thinking about a subscription like that. Groceries are insane dollars and you still don't have a full meal. Oh, we're all in this together, y'all. We'll all figure out a way to get by. If you've got any recommendations, feel free to keep dropping them in the chat. A DIY girl says, I can make great smash burgers. Yeah, you know, for someone who loves eating burgers as much as I do, it probably would be in my best interest to learn more about how to go about preparing burgers. Oh. So I moved at the beginning of this month, and then another thing that I did during the first few weeks of August, I was a camp counselor for a week at a summer sleepaway camp in Big Bear, where myself and one other co-counselor who's about my age, we were in a cabin with 8 14-year-old boys, and it was a fun week. There were the camp had campers from ages 8 to 17, and we ended up with a teen boys cabin. And this guy that I was co-counselors with, he and I were also campers at this camp back when we were about that age. So it was a great week. It was a great opportunity to unplug from social media, from electronics, and just live in nature, and to go rock wall climbing, take nature hikes, go to the pool, do skits and songs at campfire. Y'all know I was having fun with those. And I will say that it definitely made me feel somewhat old to be hearing all of the Gen Alpha lingo coming from our 13-year-old boys. Lots of references to Skibbity Toilet, Plus 50 Aura, Riz, Mewing, Freak Bob. I don't even know what half the things they talk about are references to. Oh, but it was a fun week. And I definitely felt a bit of post-camp depression for a couple of days after coming back home, which tends to happen after I spend a week away from the world. Takes a bit of an adjustment to get back, but I'm glad I did it. Glad I didn't miss it. Of course, when COVID hit, that impacted my ability to go to camp the way that I had loved to every year. But being able to go back and be counselors and co-counselors with people that I've grown up going to that camp with for years. It was a good time. It was a good reminder to keep the folks in that community close and be grateful for the relationships that I have with them. It looks like there may be some folks in the chat who grew up going to camp as well. I see that DIY girl says, I miss going to camp as a child. Century 172 says, joined right at the list off. So you probably just heard all the Gen Z, or I'm Gen Z, so you all probably heard all the, is it Gen Alpha? I think that's what it's called. I guess Alpha used to be the cool thing to be. Now it's Sigma. Oh, that's so Sigma. A lot of that this past week. Not this past week, but during this visit to the summer camp. Yeah, Gen Alpha is what I've sometimes heard the next generation after Gen Z referred to as. I also hear people just refer to them as Zoomers. I used to also hear Coronials around the start of the coronavirus pandemic. I don't know who is it that even, sociologists? I'm not sure what term the sociologists have agreed on. But I'm Gen Z, and as I understand it, Gen Z was born after 1996. And millennials, or Gen Y, are 1981 to 1996. And then Gen X, 1965 to 1980. And baby boomers before that, 1946 to 1964. So, whatever generation is after me. Maybe they are still considered Gen Z, younger Gen Z, maybe I'm elder Gen Z. I don't know. Maybe none of us will know until the sociologists start writing the books. And 20 years from now, they can look back on this time and study all the silly lingo that the kids are using these days. That DIY girl says 1976 here. So 1976, that would be Gen X. Welcome to the live stream. Thank you for your participation thus far. Anon 2008 says Gen Z is the new Gen X. I mean, age is all relative, time is all relative. Whether somebody is old or young completely depends on what they're being compared to. Many would refer to me as a young adult, but being around those 14-year-old boys and hearing their young lingo go right over my head made me feel old. Made me feel old, y'all. That DIY girl says, "You look exhausted." Yeah, I'm not too bad right now. I probably will be more tired by the end of this coming work week. But it's been a fun few weeks, getting adjusted to life changes. Well, I figured that while I'm on here, it might also make sense to take some time to talk about some recent events and recent developments. Just thinking about what order is going to make most sense for me to go in. I'm not sure if Kat Ocean is still in here, but I did mention earlier in the stream that she was at the DNC or outside of the DNC in Chicago, documenting many of the pro-Palestine protests which were happening outside of the DNC. Kat is still here, and Mandy's in here too. Hey, Mandy. In case you weren't aware, over this last week, the Democratic National Convention occurred in Chicago, where current Vice President Kamala Harris was officially nominated as the presidential candidate of the United States. Hello, one moment. And she has officially named Tim Walz as her running mate. So he, along with Kamala Harris, was officially nominated at the DNC as the Democratic candidate for vice president, alongside Kamala Harris. There were a lot of things that happened over the course of the week that I think are worth taking time to talk about. Before I get to specifics of what was discussed in some of the speeches at the DNC, I do think it might not be a bad idea to take some time to talk about Zionism and remind some folks of where some of my principles come from and why I feel strongly about certain things that I feel strongly about. One of the things that Kamala Harris spoke about in great detail, and that many spoke about in great detail, was the Democratic Party's continued commitment to unwavering support for Israel and ensuring that Israel has the right to defend itself. And if you've seen me talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict before, you probably already have an idea of where I come from and where I stand on the issue. But if you're new here, I will go ahead and share some disclaimers about where my views lie. I have stood in solidarity with pro-Palestine protesters and activists many times, and when we stand together confronting Zionism. Zionism is the belief that all of the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea belongs exclusively to Jewish people and should be inhabited exclusively by Jewish people. Prior to 1948, that land was Palestine, and it was inhabited predominantly by Arabs. In 1948, during an ongoing series of terrorist actions to ethnically cleanse Palestine and attack Palestinian villages, killing those who wouldn't leave their homes and forcing those who would leave to the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. This process, which started around 1948, has come to be known as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic. Before 1948, Zionism was the belief that a Jewish state should be established in Palestine. In 1948, the State of Israel was officially established in the midst of the ongoing Nakba. Since 1948, the United States and other nations, particularly Western nations, have continued to support Israel as it has continued the ongoing ethnic cleansing and military occupation of Palestinian territories. The goals of Zionism cannot be achieved without the mass execution of the Palestinian people, the forced displacement of the Palestinian people, or the mass imprisonment of the Palestinian people. All of these things have been going on for decades. In the last 10 months, the situation in Gaza has only become a more and more serious humanitarian crisis, with right now more than 1.8 million Palestinians in Gaza being confined to just 39 square kilometers. One moment. Hi. And I see Kat in the chat mentions that there were pro-Palestine protests and so many supporters, and it was very peaceful, but deaf in a police state. So many police officers suppressing protesters. And unfortunately, it wasn't just police officers that were suppressing protesters outside of the DNC, but inside of the Democratic National Convention. There was a congregation of Democrats from what is called the uncommitted movement. And the uncommitted movement came about before Kamala Harris was officially named as the presidential candidate, back when Biden was still in the race. The uncommitted movement came about filled with activists within the Democratic Party who refused to commit to Biden and now to Kamala Harris unless they take action to place an arms embargo on Israel. And over the last few days, quote-unquote ceasefire talks have been ongoing in Cairo. However, I strongly encourage everybody who is paying any attention to the ceasefire talks to be aware that Israel will never, and has stated that they will never agree to a permanent ceasefire. Mainstream American media sources tend to discuss the ongoing peace talks or discuss the ongoing ceasefire talks in terms that make it sound as though the United States keeps proposing ceasefire resolutions and Israel keeps agreeing to them, but Hamas is the one holding it back, is the one holding these talks back from moving forward. I would strongly encourage y'all to dig deeper whenever you see these. There was recently the first confirmed case of polio on a 10-month-old in Gaza. If I'm not mistaken, there have been no confirmed cases in 25 years, as vaccines had for the most part successfully eradicated the disease from being communicable and widespread among humans. But the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has completely decimated the ability of all Palestinians in Gaza to live in peace. It's been frequent evacuation order after evacuation order, forcing Palestinians to continue to evacuate to new quote-unquote safe zones. That is, until those safe zones cease to be safe zones. It's awful. Anyway, I was talking about the uncommitted movement. The uncommitted movement was hoping, and they were hopeful, that they would be able to have a Palestinian American speak on stage at the DNC. This did not happen. Now, the Democratic Party did allow police officers and Republicans to speak on the stage, but not a Palestinian American. And I think that that's something that many activists, including myself, are not going to forget when considering what interests the United States is most keen to protect. One moment that I did not expect was that Kamala Harris, when giving her acceptance speech, made one comment hailing the fact that we have the most lethal military in the world. And that led to some USA chants coming from the crowd. USA, USA. right after her line hailing that we have the most lethal military. I mean, it'd be one thing to celebrate having the most powerful military, but specifically the choice of the word lethal, meaning deadly, meaning, if I'm understanding and interpreting that statement correctly, it's a celebration of the fact that we are able to kill the most. We meaning the United States. It was certainly a telling moment, at least for me, to see the audience response to some of those lines. I did also throw some links in the description of this video where some of the news stories that I've referenced involving the ongoing displacement and involving the DNC. If you want to dig some more into those with some of the links that I've got, I encourage you to do so. I did also include some links about the Green Party, because although this did not get nearly as much media coverage as I did not expect it to, the Green Party did officially confirm or nominate Jill Stein and her running mate Butch Ware to be the Green Party's candidates for president and vice president during the 2024 presidential election. And if you are not familiar with Jill Stein, I would strongly encourage you to look into her campaign. I would strongly encourage you to look into whether or not the Green Party has ballot access in your state. And if they do, and if you are interested in voting for and supporting a candidate who is pro-peace, pro-planet, pro-people, values all of those things over profit, and is committed to an arms embargo to Israel, I'd encourage you to check out her campaign. I started this live stream, lots of laughing and smiling, talking about all the great things that I've gotten to do over the last few weeks. But it's hard to let too much time go by without remembering the fact that I live in the Imperial Core. I'm safe from US manufactured bombs, living in the United States. But the United States continues to exert its power over much of the third world, much of the global south. And that's why I continue to use my voice and continue to stand up for what I believe in and what's important to me, and continue to amplify the messages that I think should be amplified, and share the educational resources that I think should be shared. And I encourage you to do the same with whatever issues are most important to you. Continuing to stand up for what you believe in is important. But there is no crime worse than genocide. There is no lower low than that. And if you have never taken anti-Zionist action before, or action for the people of Palestine, I encourage you to, wherever you are, look up if there are universities near you with Students for Justice in Palestine or SJP chapters, or if the Palestinian Youth Movement or PYM has chapters near you, is living in Orange County and now in LA County. I've been fortunate to be able to spend time among activists about whom I care deeply, from the Palestinian Youth Movement, Los Angeles, Orange County, and Inland Empire chapter, as well as Students for Justice in Palestine chapters at many of the local universities. It's just one way you can use your voice and use your power to make some difference. One moment.
What I used to do, up until 2 years ago, I've always just taken off the summer.
I tend to pause my monologue for a moment when people walk by. And of course, other actions that you can take include continuing to spread educational resources. If you're active on social media, continuing to share links to articles, share fundraisers by Palestinians who are aiming to evacuate, continue to donate EIMs so that Palestinians in Gaza can continue to have internet access. And of course, you can write to your elected officials and call their offices, flood their offices with calls, and make sure that they know that their constituents are favorable toward an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and an end to military aid to Israel. Oh, Scientology asks, sorry, what are EIMs? To be honest, I don't know if I understand the technology and science behind them well enough to give a great explanation, but essentially, in light of the ongoing power cuts imposed by the Israeli occupation in the occupied Palestinian territories and in Gaza, many Palestinians in Gaza have very limited access to the internet, but by purchasing eSIMs, and I don't have any links handy right now, but next time I go live, I'll be sure to attach a link, or I can find one once I get off of this live stream and then add it to the description of this video. But by purchasing eSIMs, those eSIMs can then be used by families in Gaza so that they can have access to the internet. And thank you for asking. You probably weren't the only one who was unfamiliar with that term. I wasn't familiar with it until within the last year, when I became aware that that was one way to support the people in Gaza. Oh, Scientology says it's on PalestineToolkit.org. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. The ability to purchase and donate eSIMs directly. Very good. I'm thinking if there's anything else that I had been intending to speak on, or that I think would be pertinent and relevant to chat about. Cat Ocean asks, has Elon Musk, yuck, offered to do anything with Starlink to bring internet access over there? I do recall seeing headlines which suggested that he was several months ago, but it's been a while since I heard updates on what he's done in the region, or done to support anybody in the region. So I'm not sure. I do know that he has taken some lengths to suppress pro-Palestine content on his company X, formerly Twitter. And that's just one reason that I'm not a big fan of the guy. Slightly related to him, though, I have been seeing his transgender daughter, Vivian Wilson, who no longer has any relationship with her father. She's become more active on TikTok, and I've really admired what I've seen from her. I think she's done a good job of sticking it to her deadbeat dad, to say the least. Vivlinus, I think is her name, like villainous, but with V-I-V at the beginning. She's funny, from what I've seen so far. I'll see who else is in the chat. Who else I can say hi to? Hi, Rika. Hi, Linda. Hey, Dusty. Dusty says, I'm so proud of you. I am honored to have received a chance to meet you. Meeting you is worth every minute of 11 hours flying time and coach. Thank you, Jacob, for being who you are. Thank you, Dusty. That was a very nice comment. And for those of you who didn't catch it, last time I was at Big Blue a few weeks ago, Dusty and the Clearwater crew, Farrell Cheryl and Sarasota Jerry, were also there in Big Blue. We all got to hang out. That was a fun time. A pleasure to meet you as well. Hope things are going smoothly back in Clearwater. Oh, Linda did point out, yeah, that's right. DNC is trying to get her off the ballot too. She posted on X. Yeah, Jill Stein, this wouldn't be the first time that she or the Green Party or other Green Party candidates have been suppressed by the Democratic Party. Most recently, if I'm not mistaken, in Wisconsin. Over this last week, I saw that the DNC filed a complaint to keep Jill Stein's name off of the ballot in Wisconsin. All by the party that claims to be saving democracy. Oh, and I see Cat Ocean pointed out that yes, there were a good amount of Green Party supporters and tables at the rallies each day at the DNC. Jill Stein spoke too, I think I told you. Yeah, I did get a chance to see some of her speech. And I know we did chat about that some a little bit. It's nice to see, in the midst of the Zionist narrative being dominated in the mainstream, it's nice to see those who share some of my views. I see Linda also asked, when will you go back to college? So this semester, I'm only enrolled in one class at the same community college that I was going to last semester. I'm enrolled in a screenwriting class this semester. I am also considering pursuing a master's in education, because if I do choose to stay in education long term, which at this point I'd say is fairly likely, I've heard others in the industry say that the sooner you get your master's, the better. Your salary increases, you're able to potentially step into new leadership roles. So we'll see, because I am still also interested in law school. I have too many interests sometimes, y'all. One day I want to go to law school, become an attorney, fight for human rights in the courtroom. The next day I want to get a PhD in political science and teach political science as a professor. Next day I want to stay in special education and get my master's in education so I can continue to be the best that I can be in the industry that I'm currently in. We'll see. We'll see where life takes me. And I see Bridge 1872 does say, as an educator, that is the right path toward a master's. I've certainly been thinking about it a lot lately. And thank you for the support in the chat. I see Cat Ocean says, you'll do amazing and excel in whatever you decide to do. I appreciate you, Cat. Thank you. Scientology says, Clark Harkey, you'd be an excellent teacher. My doctoral is in education. I do not know if I knew that you were a doctor. If I knew that you had a doctorate. Dr. Chichikana. Scientology also pointed out, Jacob, before you were born, I think, 1999, in case you were curious, Tom York of Radiohead stood on stage at the end of an SNL episode with a sign that said, let Ralph debate. And I'm sure that refers to Ralph Nader, who is a previous Green Party candidate. And actually, I may have been born at that time, because what year was it that he ran? Was it 2000, 2004? I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly. Afale says, do law and politics, just my 2 cents. Those are certainly great interests of mine. Rally Sport says, never stop learning. That's great advice. And that's advice that everybody, I think, should live by. Because no matter how many degrees you have, it's never too late to keep learning. There's always more information out there to take in. And by remaining committed to continuous learning, it can strengthen your media literacy to be able to understand bias, understand why some sources may be more likely to serve the interests of a particular narrative if serving the interests of that narrative aligns with their own personal financial interests. Scientology says October 14th, 2000 was the episode. Okay, so I was 1 year old. And I see Scientology says, I didn't get grad degrees to keep learning. I did it to postpone repayment my loans. The dreaded honesty. You know, I have heard other people that I've talked to make similar comments in that they've pointed out that they don't have to start repaying their student loans until they're done going to school. So they've kept going to school. And granted, my friends I know who have taken this strategy, I do think that they have been passionate about the fields that they have chosen to study. But it is an interesting component of the education for profit system that we have in the US. Of course, all children are legally entitled to free and appropriate public education. It would be great if free education was guaranteed at the higher education level as well. Bridge 1872 says, always learn, otherwise one becomes stagnant. Agreed. Definitely agree with you there. Yeah, Scientology says, why don't we educate everybody for free beyond high school if we want our country to improve? Dang it. I'm blanking on who said the quote, but there was a quote said by somebody in a position of power. I want to say that it was in the 1970s in the US. There was somebody, a well-known name, who spoke against free college because providing free college would lead to an educated proletariat or an educated working class. The implication being that if working class citizens were able to get an education without having to take on student loans, then the masses might more likely become privy to the fact that they are being exploited under our capitalist system. Alas, we do not have free college. But again, it's yet another issue. That by continuing to use our voices, by continuing to protest, take collective action, write to our representatives, circulate petitions, it can potentially make our dreams a reality if we put our heads together. Bridge 1872 says, after 30 years in a classroom, I have students every year that I learn from. That's awesome. Yeah, I do think continuing to learn from your students is a great thing. And now I'm thinking back to what I was talking about earlier in this video, as I was talking about my 14-year-old boys in the cabin that I was a camp counselor for, teaching me all of the young person lingo that goes around these days, between skibbity toilet and plus 50 aura, riz, mewing, mogging. Never seems to end. The Mother of Darkness says, I just saw you on Jesse's video. I was recently on a few YouTube videos on Jesse Page's YouTube channel. Those were fun. If y'all didn't get a chance to see those, actually, I don't even know that I shared those on my community tab. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is something that I should share. Those were a lot of fun. Jesse Page, if you are not familiar with her, she's an activist and content creator, and she lives with Madison Werner, who is a trans rights activist. Both of them are based in Los Angeles, and recently, within the last couple of months, Jessie put a poll on her Instagram story where she indicated that she was looking for men in the Los Angeles area to film a couple of videos. One of the videos was called 1 Lesbian versus 5 Men, Do We Think the Same? Or something like that. And then the other one was a little bit of a mock dating show where Jessie was interviewing myself and 4 other men to potentially find a date for her roommate Madison. So that was fun. And again, that's Jessie Page, and I'll add her channel to the description of this video once I get off, so that y'all have an easier way to find those videos should you be interested in looking for them. But that's Jessie Page. Jessie is Jessie, and Page is Paege. Yeah, I'm in a couple of her recent videos, if y'all are interested in checking those out. Scientology says, I gotta go. Don't forget to update your description with the eSIM info. Much love to you all. Will do, and thank you for popping in. It's always nice to see you. A Filet says, I don't know any of those words. I'm assuming that you're talking about the young person lingo that I was talking about, and believe me, I learned some new words myself over the last few weeks. On the last night at campfire is always an emotional time. The last night that I get to spend with the cabin that I've been living with over the last week. The last time that we get to see all of the other cabins putting on songs and skits and doing chants together. It's always a fun time. Always a roller coaster of emotions over the course of the week. All right. Well, it is a school night for me, and I can tell that the light is becoming dimmer and the sun will be down before long. So I think I am going to go ahead and wrap up the stream before long here. But I'm glad that I got to pop on for a little bit tonight and catch up with you all, share some life updates, chat a little bit about some recent news developments. Everybody stay safe. Free Palestine. Revoke Scientology's tax-exempt status. Continue to stand up for what's important to you. And I will be in touch with you all again very shortly. All right, stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.